Drew here, and I feel like we can all let out a deep sigh of relief that Kendall didn't drown to death in the swimming pool, as poetic an ending to his life and as realistic as that might have been. And then we can take a deep breath in again after the revelation that Logan has once again managed to gain the upper hand. This time, not just screwing Kendall, but screwing Roman and Shiv as well, after they joined forces to stop him from selling Waystar Royco to Gojo. So, this was not at all the episode I expected, and I think that might be the most impressive thing about it, how masterfully the writers of this series set up everything in this episode without giving away what the payoffs were going to be in advance. They played fair. Jesse Armstrong and the writers really did, I think, and they gave pretty much all the characters, both the main players and some of the supporting players, satisfying character arc over the course of the season. But at the same time, they managed to do something unpredictable. And after the mic drop that was the ending of season 2, I'm just enormously impressed by that. I found it quite amazing what they pull off in this episode. This is the closest thing to a perfect season finale I've seen in a very, very long time. No show is perfect, but Succession is coming pretty darn close on a season finale basis. And I really, really think that this episode makes a lot of my complaints about this season kind of dissipate. Now, some of them still, I think, hold true, but on the whole, I really feel like seeing where the season was going, seeing how Jesse Armstrong and the other writers plan to wrap things up, I think it helps to make the whole season seem more impactful as a whole. Now, I have my quibbles. I feel that I really thought coming into this episode Logan was going to die, because I felt like they had to kill, for some reason I thought they had to kill either Kendall or Logan to shake up the story. But they found, I think, what they really needed to find, which is a way to shake up the story without killing anyone. And I'm really impressed by that. I think that a character death would have been the easy way out, and what they did was a lot more satisfying. I had thought Tom would come over to Kendall. Instead, this episode we see Shiv has pushed him too far. He's finally realized she doesn't love him, and we see him and Greg siding with Logan, which is, exactly the opposite of what I would have expected. But the writers, there were some writerly tricks going on here. If that's maybe the only criticism I could have, is that some of these things were a trifle too convenient. But they managed to alter the landscape so that it made perfect sense for Shiv and Roman and Kendall to band together against Logan. But at the same time, I don't think there was any way that most of us could have seen this coming. I haven't seen anyone predict this outcome. I really appreciated that they didn't leave us waiting with the Kendall cliffhanger, that they opened the episode and Logan immediately turns to his grandson, and it's as if he's speaking to the audience when he says, "He's okay. He's fine, And I was like, oh, thank goodness. I know some people think that these characters are all spoiled rich brats and they don't deserve our sympathy. I understand that viewpoint, but my thing is their parents are so awful to them. They're so damaged, so victimized. And there's a sense in which, in the ambiguity of the show, you can almost understand why Logan is correct in his assessment that they should go find their own thing. Why are we rooting for these characters to become CEO of a company when really it doesn't seem like it would be good for them, and they don't really seem like they would do well at it or that they deserve it? But simultaneously, because they're so damaged, because they're so desperate, you feel caught up in their dreams and you feel like they deserve it anyway, even though they're basically trying to take away the company that their dad labored his whole life to create. So it's a fascinating ambiguity of Succession. You see that too with Tom, in that he's this character who betrays his wife, betrays the lead trio, and it was such a gut-wrenching moment realizing that this has been set up all season. We've seen him gradually becoming disillusioned with his relationship with Shiv. And we've seen that he doesn't think anyone can succeed when they go against Logan. He told Kendall, very, very eloquently, "I think you're going to get screwed." And screwed Kendall did get. But, simultaneously, even though we hate to see Shiv betrayed like this, and kudos to Sarah Snook and her acting, her amazing acting with her eyes. I didn't realize she knew that Tom had betrayed her until I talked to my wife, and I realized, yeah, I think she did know, and then in the after special, they made that clear. Amazing acting from Sarah Snook when she's been betrayed, and you feel anger towards Tom at first, but when you think about it, this is the amazing ambiguity of Succession again. There's no reason that he shouldn't do what he did. In fact, Shiv kind of had it coming for the way that she's treated him, the way that she's at every turn withheld love from him. And I think that it'll be really interesting to see where the next season goes. I think that's the best thing that I can say about this season, is that it really, at the end of the day, with this finale, left me excited about the possibilities of the show. They really shook things up just enough to make me think, man, there's a real potential that this next season will be the best season yet. And I didn't feel that this show had that potential for most of this season, but at the end of the day, I think that they really managed to land the plane, and that's all the more impressive given that they had such a good season to follow up on. And oftentimes when you have to try to repeat a good thing, it's almost impossible to please people. But I think they pulled it off brilliantly. Best scenes of the episode for me. I love the scene with the siblings where, Roman and Shiv have realized that their father is about to turn Waystar Royco, potentially sell it out from under them, and this leaves them with no place in the company. And they're trying to stop this from happening. And instead of, joining with them and seeming worried, Kendall says, I'm not here. And the emotional devastation that this character has experienced, and the way that he describes feeling, like he doesn't care about his wife, he feels disconnected from his kids and his, his goals, and he feels like, he's just an utter failure. He doesn't feel like he has any reason to keep going. When I look at Jeremy Strong, obviously there's a lot of controversy concerning his acting method right now. I think he's the best performer in this show, or at least one of the best performers. I mean, they're all so good. I feel like that's just my opinion. But, when you look at this performance here, to me, the way he just sank into the dirt and just his body just deflated, to me, I don't feel like I'm watching an actor pretend to be, defeated. I feel like I'm watching someone who is utterly defeated and at the end of their rope. And, that's just kudos to Jeremy Strong for such an impressive performance. But I loved the scenes between the siblings this episode, as we see Roman get to be more empathetic. The jokes that he told about the server, while completely inappropriate, were so Roman, and it really helped to sell the moment, the realism of it. They don't know what to do, so Roman goes to humor, which is his way of deflating tension, his way of trying to get Kendall to look past his misery. And Shiv's reaction as well, just the physical acting that Sarah Snook did as she tried to comfort Kendall. It was amazing stuff. And the finally coming clean to them about what happened with the server. I feel that finally, expressing what has been troubling him for so long that he has had to hold inside, just between him and Logan, really, that know about it. You see the freeing influence of this in the end of the episode when he's walking up the stairs, and he doesn't even glance back at the security guard who had been shadowing him for so long and making him just very, very concerned and fearful. I thought that was really well done, showing the audience how Kendall has changed. And I love the scene in the car between the siblings as they come together and decide that they're going to go after Logan together. And I really like the possibility of the siblings working together for a change. I think that's a masterful twist on what I thought next season might be. I thought it might be Logan dying and then the siblings fighting each other for the scraps of the company. Instead, we've got them fighting with Logan together to try and hold on to what they view they are owed after all the abuse that they've suffered from their father. And I just loved the final sequence. I think it was one of the best sequences ever in Succession. I don't think that this is my favorite episode of Succession ever, but it's pretty darn close. And there are things in this episode that are honestly the most impressive bits of Succession I've ever seen. But the final face-off with Logan. Obviously, Brian Cox, his acting is always very, very good. He's just such a great classically trained actor. And this face-off, though, I've felt like I've gotten tired of Logan, getting the upper hand, always managing to come out from the bottom and wrest control away from his children. But I really feel like once this character exits the show will lose a lot. So I understand the decision to have him end up on top again. I do question, I always felt like Logan viewed his company as an extension of himself. Like in season 2, people were telling him, you're in a dying market. But what did he do? He went out and tried to buy more of the market because he just doesn't believe people when they say that he's in a dying market. And he believes that, like himself, his company, Waystar Royco, is invincible. You see that in this episode as he is potentially contemplating having more children with Carrie. So to me, the idea that he would sell Waystar Royco because he realizes that he's in a dying market and that he needs to get out because he doesn't have the infrastructure to modernize his company, doesn't have the ability to do that, to me, that did not ring true. I do feel, like people can change, they can grow, but I don't think Logan has really shown a great capacity for that prior to this season. So I really question that bit of writing. But I do think it helped them to get the show into a very, very interesting spot. So I can accept it for that reason. But this final scene, where everyone is being betrayed, Carolyn obviously not winning Mother of the Year awards, I think in some ways she's actually more odious than Logan. Her decision, my wife questioned whether it was Shiv's best lady speech that led her mother to do this. I feel that it was just always the situation where Caroline was always going to do what was best for her and not really consider her children at all in making that decision. Nonetheless, Shiv, you see this desire in her, even that has gone unexpressed, to be closer to her mother, and then just this realization that her mother has done what she always done and screwed them over. And the realization, that look in her eyes when she realized that Tom as well had screwed her over, and that once again she'd come in strong, believing she could finally, put her father in his place, and he's still holding all the cards. I hated to have to watch that happen. I hated watching Logan be like, "I've won, you have nothing." I hated that scene, but I also loved it because it was so dramatically intense and satisfying. Roman, I predicted at the beginning of this season that this seemed like it might be his big season. And in a way, you kind of see the structure of the show that in first season, Logan is looking at Kendall being like, can he be the CEO a little bit? And then he's like, no, he can't. Season 2, he's kind of looking at Shiv. Can she be the CEO? And he finally comes to the conclusion, no, she can't. And this season, he's looking at Roman, and then the situation with Jerry comes to the front, and he has kind of come to realize, no, I don't think Roman can fill my shoes either. So with that, I guess you could argue that he finally comes to the conclusion that it's time to pass on his company to someone else. He's giving up on these kids because they can't hack it. And Roman, to his credit, is the only one who seems to have realized this without going through what Kendall and Shiv went through. There is a degree to which he can see it coming, the way that Logan was asking him questions about his sexual orientation this episode, asking him what's wrong with him, essentially. But at the same time, Logan is saying, hey, I have a place for you. I'm going to take care of you. And my conclusion is that line at the end of this episode where Roman talks about why shouldn't Logan do this, and he says love. And I think that has always been more of a motivating factor for Roman than for his other siblings. I think Shiv has always been more about power than Roman has, and I would say Kendall, it's a similar thing. But with Roman, you see here, I think that ultimately his decision to side with his siblings is out of love for them. And I think that in some sense, his desire to become the successor had more to do with a desire to win Logan's love than out of an actual desire for power. But again, Roman ends up, I really feel Kieran Culkin, his acting in this episode, to me, it stood out as perhaps the best acting of the episode. The final moments when he had this confrontation and he finally stood up to Logan and then got, sliced and diced with his siblings for his trouble. I thought that was just really impressive acting on his part. With his eyes, with his facial expressions, with his physicality, all of it. It was pitch perfect performance from Kieran Culkin. And I would love to see him win an award, but they should probably put him in for supporting, because I doubt he'll be able to win if he goes in for Best Actor in a drama series. But we'll see. But on the whole, I don't know how any other actor is going to win awards if they're up against these actors, because all the performances were perfect. And on a final note, I really thought it was interesting just the way that Jeremy Strong, he really has receded into the background this season. Season 2, he really felt like the lead of the show by the end. But this season, I really felt like he kind of got pushed aside a lot of the time. And in this final episode, I loved how the three of them went in together. I loved the unity that they were showing. And I thought it was really, really telling that Kendall is the only one who doesn't do much talking, and he doesn't seem to emotionally respond to much of what happens because he's gone through it all before. It's not surprising to him. Yeah, he was willing to go along with his siblings, pass him the shotgun to off their dad, but at the end of the day, he knew that this could very likely be the outcome, and he was more prepared for that. And you see that in the way that he's comforting Roman after they've been decimated by their father. So, there were other things I could bring up this episode, but it was such a packed episode. Those were the things that really, really stood out to me. And I'm really excited to see where they go with next season. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you thought of All the Bells Say. If you're interested in seeing my other reviews of upcoming shows, please consider subscribing. Hit the like button if you will. And as always, thank you for watching.